Okay, hey everyone, coming to you tonight. I'm coming to you from a Target parking lot. Actually, I don't know if you can pick up on the red glow. Just was a better parking lot situation tonight. But yeah, here we are, Minivan Theology Refrigerator Magnet number 6, and tonight is one that is a little tricky, not because the verse is tricky, but because the world makes this verse tricky. Okay, well, let's just get to it. So tonight we're going to be looking at Matthew 7:1, and it's a very teeny tiny short verse. And it says, "Judge not, that you be not judged." The ESV, I know it more in the King James, and I don't know why, because I wasn't raised on King James, but "judge not, lest ye be judged." But yeah, it's basically judge not so that you're not judged. Okay. Why is this tricky? Well, it's tricky because in every single way, just in every way, our culture, whether you're a Christian, raised in church land, not raised in church land, doesn't matter. Our culture takes this verse and condenses it to don't judge. Just don't judge. Don't judge, man. You be you and I'll be me. You live your truth and I'll live my truth. That's cool. Whatever you're doing, totally cool. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Just, and that is just everywhere. It's just soaked into the fabric of our entire life. You almost trip over it when somebody's doing something, that you don't necessarily approve of. And you say something like, dude, are you judging me? Don't judge me. You do you and I'll do me. That you do you thing. Which is not to say I never say that. I do. But that's the thing. It's everywhere. It's the whole culture. So tonight we're going to look at what this verse actually means. And this is a great example of why just getting the postcard of the Grand Canyon, and if you don't know what that means, go back to the first one of this series and check it out. Just getting the postcard of the Grand Canyon sometimes is just, we don't understand. We just see it's this flat piece of paper. We don't understand the canyon. It's actually this deep, deep, giant, thing you can see from space. We don't get that from a postcard. And in this case, judge not lest you be judged. You just don't understand the full context unless you drive up and jump out of the car and take a look around. Well, that in fact is a deep hole. Yes, it is. You have to get there and see it and feel it a little bit. So we're going to look at this and just keep in your mind as you listen the ways in which this to be true in your own. It's just impossible, especially if you're a parent. You get this all the time in everything. It's everywhere. It's in all the classes. It's in all of the things you see on media. It's certainly on TikTok. It's my fitness stuff that I do when I work out. They talk about, your truth and you and you've got your own truth and speak your truth and claim your truth. And that's a version of saying it's all relative. So what's good for you may not be good for me, and don't judge. Just don't judge. That's not what this verse is saying. Okay, so this verse, Matthew 7:1, it is near the end of a discourse or a sermon that Jesus was giving at the very beginning of his ministry. It's called, you probably have heard of this, the Sermon on the Mount. Now, Matthew is it's the first of the 4 Gospels that we find in the New Testament. It probably was not the first one written. I don't know why they put it first. They didn't ask me. I would have put it in chronological order, which would have been Mark, but they didn't. So Matthew's first. Matthew is one of the disciples. He was the tax collector, a guy that you wouldn't hang out with, and then Jesus called him. And so, that was a lesson for all of us to hang out with people like that, because Jesus did. If he can do it, we probably can do it too. And he writes this gospel. It's famous for a couple things. It's got the genealogy at the beginning of Matthew that, again, shows you the people in Jesus's ancestry. They were not great people. They made a lot of mistakes. They did some crazy stuff. There's a king in there that threw his kids into the fire, and he's in Jesus's genealogy. So it should encourage all of us that nobody is too far to be included into the kingdom of God, which really Jesus talks about in the Gospel of Matthew the most. He talks about the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. And Matthew is written to people that are probably Jewish people who were becoming believers and followers of Jesus, or if they weren't, to convince them that this would be the right thing to do. And specifically, this first sermon that Jesus gives, the Sermon on the Mount, it's found in chapters 5-7. He's giving this to people that have followed them. By definition, he goes out into the wilderness, onto this mountain, and these people have followed him. So they're following him, and they are followers of Jesus. And they are instructions for people that follow him, people that are in this kingdom of heaven, or want to be in this kingdom of heaven, or about to be in the kingdom of heaven, this kingdom that he's creating here on earth. Now, an interesting thing to talk about contextually is the last time that we see God on a mountain was back in the Old Testament when God is giving the 10 Commandments to Moses. Now, we talked about that last time when we talked about the tablets of the heart. And we said the last time we heard the word tablets was also back in the Old Testament when God was writing the law on the actual stone tablets that he gave to Moses. A lot of times what you will see in the Gospels is, in fact, Jesus taking something that the Jewish followers would have been so familiar with. They would have heard the story of God giving Moses the law, gazillions of times. It would have been their Sunday school flannelgram. And recreating it and changing it to make it accessible to the people in a new way. So, for example, in the Old Testament, when God gives Moses the law up on Mount Sinai, the people were told, don't even come near the mountain. If you even touch the mountain, you'll die. You can't even come close to the mountain. Why? Because God is holy. And here's Jesus claiming to be God saying, come on the mountain, sit down, lean up against a boulder, sit in the grass over there, come on up the mountain. We can high five, you can touch me, I'm right here. And he makes it accessible. And he says this new kingdom, this new way of being in relationship is one where these people could physically be right there, on the same mountain as Jesus. And so it's a whole new paradigm, taking what was in the Old Testament and giving it this twist that makes it now that people could be in relationship with God and not die from touching the mountain, because Jesus makes it possible. So all that is to say, it's a big deal, the Sermon on the Mount, and it's important that we understand the chapters that precede our verse in chapter 7, verse 1. So there's chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5 contains what's called the Beatitudes. Now, if you're somebody who follows me, I don't have a lot of followers, but just if you do, you know that I've been writing a series on the Beatitudes for the camp that we are at in the summer, and one a month I've been going through the Beatitudes. So I'm pretty familiar with the Beatitudes, and what I've been saying in that is chapter 5, they are instructions for people that are following Jesus. And so it's sort of a if-then statement. They're blessed are those who X, Y, and Z, for they shall X, Y, and Z. And so the Beatitudes list out a bunch of actions that people that are in the kingdom of heaven that follow Jesus, if they take, this is how they will be blessed. And then it goes on to list, but remember that they're actions, okay? They're states of the heart and their actions, and they all have ways that can be physically manifested in the world. And then Jesus goes on in this sermon to take a lot of really common problems of humanity. He goes through things such as anger. I'm just reading the subtitles of the Bible. I'm not inventing new categories. Anger, lust, marriage and divorce, swearing, retaliation, how to treat our enemies. These are all practical things, and he expands them. He says, you may have heard about it this way through the law that God gave Moses on those tablets, and Jesus expands it. And he talks about these actions. So, for example, let's look at the murder one. He says, you may have heard that you shouldn't murder. Got it. We're all like, good. I got that one down. I've figured that all out. I've not murdered anybody today. And he says in chapter 5, but I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be liable to the council, and whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. So the point is, that's great that you didn't actually go out and kill somebody today, but even before I woke up and had coffee this morning, I probably was mad at somebody. And Jesus is saying, it's just as bad. It's just as bad. Now, hear me on this, because remember what we're talking about, judge not lest you be judged, as if it's a moral relative world. You do you, whatever is good for you is good for you, but it's different for me. Jesus is saying murder is murder. Always, always, murder is murder. And in fact, it's worse than you think, because before you've even had your coffee, you've probably committed murder in your heart. And it's true for all of these other actions that he talks about. And then in chapter 6, it gets even worse. He talks about, again, two people that are in this kingdom that are or following Jesus and want to have instructions for this kingdom that he's inaugurating here on earth. It's sort of an already not yet. He talks about a lot of the things that maybe we call, religiosity, or like, churchiness, especially if you grew up in church land. It's a lot of the like, uh-oh, did you see what she wore to church? It's that kind of attitude. And he talks about giving to the needy, praying, fasting. He's talking about these spiritual exercises, and he's trying to contrast the Pharisees, who were back then, they were like the overly churchy know-it-all people who did it all for appearance and for show. And he's saying, I don't care about that. I don't care about your super fancy outfit that you wore to church. Good for you, gold star. Nope, don't care. What I care about is what's going on in your heart. And he says, if you come and you pray and you're quiet about it, doesn't matter that everybody hears it or not, God hears it. That's what he wants. He wants our heart. We talk about this every single time. He wants our heart. He talks about fasting. If you do like a big drama and put on a big face, oh, look at me, I'm so wonderful, I'm fasting. Doesn't care. He wants our hearts. He wants to see that we're doing it because we love him and we want to follow him and we want to obey these ideas that he's put forth in his kingdom. So again, you can see in each of these chapters, 5 and 6, he's giving standards. He's saying, here's the standard you thought, don't murder. I'm saying it's actually up here. And that should make all of us feel like, big problems. There should be alarm bells ringing, because in every single one of these cases, we know that we've fallen short. There's a very famous verse in Romans 3, the Apostle Paul, we've talked about him before, that he writes, and if you grew up in church land, you know it, and if you didn't grow up in church land, you maybe have had it said in a snarky way to you, but it's an important verse, and it says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Falling short, we all fall short. Before you've had coffee, you have fallen short. So then we get to chapter 7, verse 1. Judge not, that you be not judged. Well, that does not mean that there are no absolutes and that there are no standards and that there are not some things that are black and white. Murder, always wrong every single time. In fact, worse than you think. What it means, and let's go on and look at the next couple verses to get clarity on this, is that, like we just said about Romans, we all fall short. All of us, every single time. Now, after verse 1, glasses, you get this section that's, often also taken out of context. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye? It's the speck of sawdust, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye. Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will clearly see to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Now, is Jesus saying there's no such thing as sawdust and logs? No, he's not saying that. One of you's got a speck in your eye of sawdust and one of you's got a log. So he's not saying there's no such thing. Your truth is there's no such thing as wood in your world. In your world, there is no sawdust. That's what's true for you. He's not saying that. He's saying there's definitely sawdust and sometimes it gets stuck in your eye. But he's saying it's true for everybody. Everybody has this problem. And when you say, hey, look at you, you've got, this giant thing in your eye, the person can turn around and say, have you seen what's in your eye? We're all under judgment. Here's the thing. There are 3 things that I want to talk about that we can get from this verse. I'm just going to keep my computer running. 1, it's clear Jesus is not saying that there are no standards and that there's not something by which we are all judged. There is a standard. We are all under judgment. We all fall short of it. 2, what's also true, and we talk about this every single time, is when we realize that we all fall short of it, we know it's about our heart, right? Because I know that I didn't actually go out and kill somebody physically today, but I also know that I was angry with somebody today. So murder is not about actually physically killing somebody, it's about the state of my heart. And when you read these first few chapters, you realize my heart's a mess. Yeah, that's right, your heart's a mess. And that's what we keep talking about every single time. But third, and this is the most important, when we talk about not judging, it's not because we're saying we're so much better or it's relative and what you're doing doesn't, no. We're saying we don't need to always be in judgment because we know who the judge is. So when you have somebody, we're all out there, right? We're all drowning. We're all out there drowning and dying and the water is coming in over top of us. And Jesus saves us. He rescues us. He pulls us out of the water. And while we're standing there wringing our clothes out and we look over and see our friend, who wore that outfit to church, the outfit I'm talking about, are we saying, oh, hang on, I'm just, I'm wringing up my water. Sorry, that outfit is really not working. You should probably like go, I don't know, maybe get Stitch Fix. Maybe that'll help you with your outfit choice. No, we should say, we were just there. We're wringing out my clothes are still dripping wet. I was just there. Let me introduce you to the judge, who's also the Savior, who's also the King, who's also Jesus. The point of this statement is not to say there's no absolute truth. It's saying we know the one who creates the standard of absolute truth. We understand that we are under judgment, but we know the judge. Let me help you with the situation where you're drowning, and let me introduce you to the judge. When we're saying to somebody, oh yeah, that choice that you're making, it could be anything. Like, I don't know, are you sleeping with your boyfriend? Are you like dabbling with, drugs or things like that? Those are wrong things, right? We can say that that's an absolute standard, but are we saying it in a tone of like, I'm so much better than you? Or are we saying, I was just there. That was just my problem. Let me introduce you to the one who can fix you, the one who can heal your heart, the one who can pull you out of the water and set you onto dry land. That's what this is saying. That's what Jesus is doing for us. And so then when we talk about, of course, this big story, the whole Bible, one story, one main character, it's God, it's not us. It's about him wanting to be in relationship with us. And he is the judge, and we are all under judgment. But that's the story of the Bible. Since the very beginning, since they messed up in the garden, and we've been messing up ever since, God said, I've got a plan as the judge, and that is to send my son, Jesus. And he takes all the judgment. He drowns in the water instead of us. He's the one who takes all of that judgment, pays the price, touches the mountain, and he is killed. He does die. But then he overcomes death itself, and he gives that power to us, and that is the power that we can have in our heart. And so we no longer need to be in a position of superiority and, holier than thou, and oh, look at me, I prayed this fancy super prayer. We don't need, because we know where we just were. And we can say to people, I get it, I've been there too, but let me introduce you to the one who hasn't, and to the one who saves you. You can say to them, boy, do I have a story for you. I was once lost, but now I am found. And that's the only judgment that we really need. All right, I hope that's made sense for that verse. Judge not, lest ye be judged. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. You watch when you go out there tomorrow into the real world, and you'll see all the ways that the world wants to tell you that truth is relative. It's not. But now you understand you can be in a relationship with the one who sets the truth. Okay, here's our view of the minivan. Everybody loves it. Oh, look, there's Target. All right, bye, everybody. Thanks. Good night.